Good morning. It's Monday, December 21st, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, fire on Lebanon. Tensions escalate anew between Israel and Hezbollah after the killing of Samir Quntar. A veteran Israeli minister says he's leaving politics after facing multiple claims of sexual misconduct. And later on in the show, the young generation of Russian immigrants in Israel reinvent the festivities of Novi God. Good morning, I'm Meredith Ross, and we begin here in the region. The Israeli military fired artillery on targets in southern Lebanon yesterday in response to rocket fire emanating from the area. 3 Katyusha rockets were fired towards the northern Galilee. Only one of them made it across the border and landed in an unpopulated area, causing no damage. Now, the rare and risky flare-up on the northern border came a day after Samir Quntar, a Hezbollah terrorist who spent decades in an Israeli jail for his role in a brutal murder of a family in 1979, was killed in an airstrike outside Damascus, which has been widely attributed to Israel. A Lebanese lawmaker representing Hezbollah in parliament said the group would extract a price from Israel for the killing of Quntar. Now, both the Syrian and Iranian governments condemned the act of, quote, Zionist terrorism. And Israel claims no role in the ongoing war in Syria, but has reportedly carried out several attacks there in recent years, most often to prevent sophisticated weapons from moving from the Syrian regime to Hezbollah hands. Now, let's take a look at the following report, and we'll take it from there.
Israelis awoke Sunday and learned of the death of Samir Quntar, one of the most notorious and brutal terrorists in the country's history. Quntar was killed in an airstrike which targeted a building in Damascus Saturday night. Hezbollah attributed the strike to Israel. Quntar had joined the militant Shiite organization in 2008, following his release from Israeli prison, in exchange for the bodies of dead IDF soldiers. 36 years ago, Quntar, who was of the Lebanese Druze minority, was active in a different group. Samir Quntar was a member of a 4-man terrorist cell belonging to the Palestinian Liberation Front. On April 22, 1979, he and his companions used a small boat to sail from Lebanon up north to here, the Israeli town of Nahariya. They landed on this beach with the purpose of carrying out a terrorist attack. 4 Israelis died during the attack. The first was a policeman, Eliyahu Shachar, who was killed in a shootout which started after the terrorists were spotted near the beach. After, Samir Quntar, only 16 at the time, quickly headed for this building, which was home to Danny and Smadar Haran and their 2 young daughters. Roni Karen is Danny's brother. Ironically, he had heard of Quntar's terror cell even before the incident.
I was a naval commando doing reserve duty during that period. We knew about this terror cell from intelligence, and we were charged with locating them or catching them while they were still training.
There were even indications the terrorists were looking to target coastal houses in Nahariya.
The house Danny lived in really stood out. It was 4 stories, and at the time the other buildings nearby were single-floor houses. I told him, your house stands out as a target.
The apartment we are in right now was home to the Haran family. It was here that Danny Haran and one of the couple's young daughters were abducted and taken away. Meanwhile, above the bathroom that we see here was a secret attic in which Smadar Haran, the mother, and the couple's other young daughter hid. It has since been removed by the current occupant.
I asked him to clear things from the attic to create a hiding place for the family, and that indeed is what saved Smadar.
Smadar's 2-year-old daughter, Yael, however, was not as fortunate. She suffocated to death as her mother tried to keep her silent while the two were hiding. Danny Haran and the couple's other daughter, Einat, were abducted at gunpoint by Quntar and taken to the beach. There, Quntar shot and killed Danny before he smashed 4-year-old Einat's head on a rock. Osnat, who lives in the apartment today, expressed relief at news of Quntar's death.
Yes, I'm relieved. I have to say I was fairly concerned when he was released. He knew the house and the street, and I was fearful he could return someday.
This was a murderer who murdered a 4.5-year-old girl and was actually proud of it. It wasn't only him. Hezbollah as a whole are proud of what he did, and he became a hero. He never expressed regret, and it was clear to me that he would return to what he did before.
Indeed, Quntar was active in Hezbollah's activities against Israel following his release. devoting the final years of his life to rallying Syrian Druze against the Jewish state and in support of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. While his death may have brought some sense of justice to relatives of the deceased, it cannot heal the wounds completely.
My brother's always with us. He's always there. And basically, the family lives on with us. It doesn't go away.
And we're now joined in studio by Haaretz senior defense correspondent Amir Oren. Good morning, Amir.
Meredith,
and also with us is I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Wakat.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Amir, we'll begin with you. Israel will obviously not comment on this strike, but what is the coincidence that such a high-ranking terrorist from Hezbollah is killed in Damascus in an airstrike? Does this have Israel written all over it?
Well, for all practical purposes, Israel confirms. It won't do it officially, but it doesn't deny it and doesn't try to lead journalists away from the indication that it was an Israeli strike. But even though what we saw here was really horrific, a crime perpetrated 36 years ago, there is no capital punishment in Israel, so he was spared Quntar, he got a life sentence and then was released in a deal. Nevertheless, it was not payback. Israel did not take vengeance upon Quntar, neither for the murder nor for the humiliation of having to release him. It was to preempt a new terror act, which he was in the process of planning when he was hit. Right. Because the Israelis understand full well that following such a strike, there will possibly be a retaliation, which indeed is what took place. And they know that you never know whether any civilian will be hit by Hezbollah or any other retaliation. So they have to weigh very carefully whether to strike at such an arch-terrorist. If they did it, it was because he and his network were planning to act against Israel on the Golan Heights front.
And as you said, Hezbollah is planning to extract a price for this killing. At least that's what a lawmaker for Hezbollah in parliament said. But what does his killing mean for the region? I mean, we saw yesterday a bit of a flare-up on the northern border, which is extremely fragile. Where will this go from here?
I don't know if it means anything for the region. It means, of course, for Hezbollah, his allies, and also his rivals and an enemy, that Israel caught Hezbollah in one of its weakest points since the Shiite organization was founded back in the early 80s. The bill between Hezbollah and Israel is becoming longer. Of course, the killing, the assassination by the Israelis of Ahmad al-Mughni, the chief of staff of the Hezbollah army, was not yet settled by Hezbollah, who is deeply involved in the Syrian conflict, and I don't see the organization trying to open a new front with Israel. I guess Hezbollah will try to incite more attacks within the within the West Bank and maybe from the Gaza Strip, and of course planning some attacks against Israeli and Jewish targets abroad in Latin America or in Africa. But I don't see Hezbollah now, when he knows that the public opinion in Lebanon is not satisfied with the very controversial involvement of the organization in Syria, pulling Lebanon once again in a war with Israel.
As part of the fluid situation in Syria during the 4.5 years of the civil war, Quntar, whether or not he was still on the payroll of Hezbollah, was semi-autonomous. He was freelancing for others, especially for the Iranians. Now, one always identifies Hezbollah with Iran, but there are some other interests. There is a convergence of interests, but also divergence. In this particular case, Quntar was acting in the Golan Heights, or on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, independently of Hezbollah. Hezbollah did not want a flare-up. Right now, it is involved in other matters. For it is better to delay the next escalation vis-a-vis Israel.
Mm-hmm. And you know, as Amir mentioned, Quntar has been planning anti-Israel activities since his release in 2008, in which he rejoined Hezbollah?
I don't know what planned exactly Quntar, but with no doubt, one of the goals of the Syrian regime, even before the civil war in Syria, was to try to launch a campaign that would be led by what they call the popular committees for the liberation of the Golan. These committees were supposed to be formed and operated by Syrians in both sides, mainly Druze. Quntar is a Druze who has excellent relation with the leaders of the Druze community who are loyal to the regime. One of those is Midhat Saleh, a former senior militant of the regime in the Israeli side of the Golan, who ran away, who succeeded to pass the borders between the Israeli parts of the Golan and the Syrian part, and is now the representative of the so-called representative of the Golan in the Legislative Council in the Syrian parliament. And yes, Quntar's mission was to recruit members and volunteers to these committees to try to launch attacks against the Israelis. I hear what Amir saying. I heard what yesterday the Israeli said, and I'm not sure that Hezbollah might have a different approach to the situation in regards to the Iranian. But even if it is, I think that Samir Quntar for sure was part of something that in the future was supposed to hurt the Israeli security.
Either by IEDs, by explosive devices next to the border fence, or a rocket launch, if he had access to it, would have tried to hit Israeli soldiers and civilians within the Israeli-held Golan Heights.
Okay, which has been attempted and done in the past.
Yes. Lastly, last January, when Jihad Murnia, the son of Imad Murnia, along with senior Iranian commanders, were killed, and then Hezbollah retaliated and killed 2 Israeli servicemen.
Amir Oren and Ali Walker, we don't actually have too much time left. Unfortunately, we have taken all of our time today. But thank you both very much for being here this morning.
Thank you.